Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Wednesday, June 19th, 2019. Thanks for tuning in to our evening edition of the Grand Solar Minimum News Update. Here at the Grand Solar Minimum News, where we lay out all the links to our articles that we discussed tonight. Well, let's get started with some space wind, some space weather. Solar wind sitting at 328.8 kilometers per second with a density of 9.7 protons. Taking a look at SPACEWEATHER.com, and we are checking out the sun. It is blank once again. That's 31 days in a row without a sunspot. 104 days for 2019, 62% of the year without sunspots, and the TCI continues to stay at the 3.58 levels. So continuing to see a cooling trend in the TCI reading so far. But let's go over to our space weather section here at the GrandSolarMinimum.com. Very quiet sun, folks. It's been a KP of 1 for about 3 days now. One reading came in at a 0 for a brief period of time. Let's go ahead and check out the SDO in motion as I tried to show you guys earlier today. That coronal hole that will be affecting our magnetic field tomorrow should be weak. Nothing really to look forward to. Nothing impressive anyway. And really looking at our sun, guys, in the eastern limb, we might have a slight coronal hole developing, about to be Earth facing, but a very small region. There's nothing on the outer eastern limb that would indicate any kind of large active region or even any kind of major coronal holes. The sun is just kind of holding steady and staying quiet. So the question has to be raised now. We're at 31 days. I made the comment the other day about a possibility of seeing 35 spotless days or more, and that active region in the negative 180 is still quite a few days away. So we're on our way to breaking that. And actually, somebody left a comment telling us how long the longest we went without a sunspot was, I believe, 92 days in a row. Forgive me, I don't remember the year, but it was, I believe it was somewhere about 100 years back. So interesting fact there, but we have not seen a sunspot in 31 days. And right now, unless something just rapidly develops on the face of the disk right now, I don't see any sunspots for at least another 10 to 15 days, the possibility of one anyway. And take a look at TSI. Yes, that's right. Finally, getting some data back, and very up and down here, but right now we're currently sitting at a 1360.77 for the TSI reading on June 10th, 2019. So it's been a while since we've had access or even readings from this particular website. Hopefully we're back on track once again, but there is still a little bit of missing data, so there's always that to look at as well. And taking a look now, some of our articles worldwide. Strong and shallow 6.3 earthquake hits Papua, Indonesia. Kind of lined these up here a little bit, but a strong and shallow earthquake registered by the USGS as a 6.3 hit Papua, Indonesia at 1724 UTC on June 19th. The agency is reporting a depth of about 7.5 miles. The epicenter was located about 156 miles west of Apura, population 62,000 people. 7,000 estimated felt strong shaking, 44,000 felt moderate, and 237,000 people felt light shaking. There are no reports of any damage, injury, or deaths at this time, but just wanted to add it to our long list of earthquake that we've talked about here over the past several days. We are looking at right now several 6.0 or higher earthquakes just in the past 7 to 10 days, along with volcanoes going off behind that. And we are talking about Popo, Sinabung, Agung, Merapi. I'm sure I'm forgetting others as well, but we've had an increase lately in volcanic eruptions of 30,000 feet or higher. And you know, the longer I do this, the more I hear different numbers for how high does these ash plumes have to go to be effective as far as the climate goes. And I've always heard 50, 55,000, but I read something today where they're saying 32,800 feet is enough to affect climate conditions locally or regionally. So still something to think about, how many regional climates are going to be affected by these earthquakes, the CO2 release from those, and as well the volcanic eruptions. And just to report on these clusters over here, the strong and shallow 6.4 today as well, and the chromatic islands in New Zealand. We first started talking about this, I think, last week. This is the 31st earthquake to hit the area since June 13th, 2019. And down at the bottom of this, there is a great chart that shows us exactly what our magnitudes have been since this all started. Let's start at the bottom here. June 13th, the first earthquake was at 5.3, and then an aftershock of 4.8. And then this is where we started to get to rocking a little bit, a 7.2 that was 34.4 kilometers deep, 5.3, 5.0, 4.6, 5.0, 5.5, and then a 6.3 followed by a 5.5. This is on the 16th. Another 5.5 on the 16th, and then we fast forward to the 17th, mainly in the 4.9 region, a 6.0 on the 17th, and closes off the 17th with a 5. It looks like a 5.4. And then today and yesterday, we are seeing upticks of earthquakes at 5.0 or higher. So what we've seen so far is a couple of strong earthquakes followed by some 4.9s, and then some eventually lower 5 aftershocks. And then today with the 6.4, it'll be interesting to see what we continue to see as far as aftershocks for these earthquakes. Are they going to stay higher or in the same range as the 5-point magnitudes? Again, thanks to the Watchers.news for the article and the statistics. The links will be left on our website here at thegrandsolarminimum.com. Let's go back to Watchers for some destructive floods in Trabzon, leaving 10 people dead or missing in Turkey, so they're not really sure. Heavy rain hits parts of Turkey on June 18th, 2019, causing destructive flooding in the northeastern province of Trabzon. At least 5 people were killed, 5 are still missing, and 3 were injured after heavy rain hit Trabzon's Irakli district on June 18th, causing 2 streams to overflow, according to the data provided by the country's interior ministry. Firefighters were immediately dispatched to the scene but had difficulty reaching the affected areas as debris brought by the floods blocked the roads. Floods and landslides destroyed homes and cars and seriously damaged at least 1 school building. Agriculture and Forestry Ministry said pipes and hydroelectric plant exploded following the floods and landslides. More heavy rainfall is expected in the days to come. And here is a collection of some footage of how bad the floods, but not only the floods, but the actual overflow of debris that was just everywhere. This guy here is waist deep in debris and water. If you look to the right, you'll see a picture here. The road is being pretty much driven away by the floodwaters. Fallen trees. Usually, hopefully nobody was in these cars when this tree had fallen. I mean, it pretty much mangled this van. So my guess is that hopefully it was just parked on the side of the road. But plenty of flood footage, fallen trees, fallen power lines, you name it. And just another region of the world, Turkey. We showed you guys footage from Spain, Portugal, northern Italy, everywhere. And Turkey, I think this is the second time we've talked about Turkey with massive floods like this. I mean, guys, look at the watermarks on these houses right here. You guys can see it. So, to me, this is indication of reoccurring flooding here when we see the watermark of the last big flood they had there. That or the footage was captured after the floodwater started to recede, but this looks like it's pretty much raging here. So, either way you look at it, folks, this is not the first time they've been hit with these kind of floods, unfortunately. And just awful destruction, once again, causing these rushing waters, these flash floods, this heavy rain, and then, of course, after it causes major damage, there's still talk of more heavy rain on the way for the region over the next several days. Very rare anticyclonic tornado hits Dual County in South Dakota. A rare anticyclonic tornado touched down about 5.5 miles northeast of Esteline, South Dakota during the evening hours on June 15th, 2019. The EF0 tornado lasted less than a minute and knocked down 7 trees at a farmstead. It was moving in an easterly direction, tossing tree branches to the south and west from the group of trees that were knocked down. One of the trees hit the corner of the shed and bent part of the metal overhang on that shed. We got a little footage here of this tornado. You see it here, folks. Based off the radar data, damage report, and a Facebook video of the tornado occurred northeast of Esteline, appears to be very rare anticyclonic tornado, which means that it was rotating in a clockwise direction. Yeah. Very rare tornado indeed. In the northern hemisphere, nearly all the tornadoes occur at a rate at counterclockwise direction. Estimates indicate that maybe only 1% of tornadoes are anticyclonic, like the one that occurred on June 15th. The storm split off from the parent thunderstorm and moved easterly, while the parent storm continued to move southeast. Meteorologists define these types of storms as left-moving since they move to the left of the storm that they split from. Almost like a spin-off of a TV program. This storm was like the bastard child of the storm, and because of that, it spun up a tornado that went in clockwise direction. I'd like to do some more research about these and find out what the correlation and why we saw one. I've never heard of one until today. Those of you that are in the chat tonight, enlighten Mari if you've seen this type of weather before, or if any of you actually know the results of how many of these we actually get in a year, 5-year period, or even a decade. I'm curious to know, is it during solar minimums, or is it just a random thing that we can't pin solar activity on? This is just one of these freak occurrences where the weather conditions were just favorable for this kind of weather. Who knows? Maybe some of you do in the chat. So if you do, let me know. All right, guys, sit tight. Be right back.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.
All right, so climate news tonight. And we've got a lot to talk about. We've had some issues with some CO2 talk and some glacier talk, and today Mari and I experienced yet another censorship attempt by Facebook. Mari had randomly shared a link yesterday on Facebook and Twitter talking about the glaciers not retreating due to global warming. So the data stops in 2015 since the article is old. Mari had also commented in the link for the video on Facebook, gotta love the old reminders, meaning this was not a current article. This got a lot of attention from us on Twitter. And actually, Jim Cantori singled it out and liked it. However, today we woke up with the message of the article that we shared was now 404'd on Forbes.com, and some hoax alert website has literally not called us out by name, but I mean, Mari, the troublemaker that she is solely responsible for this because she had started sharing this random article from back in 2015, and they accuse Mari, or I'm assuming they're accusing her, of cherry picking data. And the discussion I had with Mari today was kind of along the lines of, they're saying it's cherry picking because you don't have the numbers that show the melt that we had in 18 and 17 and 16. And they're upset that that's not being reflected in this conversation of global warming causing the ice caps to melt. But we all know that 18 and 19 has had stronger ice growth than we've seen in the past 5-7 years. So, but with that all being said, it's truly begun a battle now. Ever since the whole NASA article was leaked out and people like us have connected the dots, I know I've seen other channels covering it. DAP 2030 mentioned a little bit about it. And it seems like now we are digging in for the real fight of censorship, of articles being removed, of people being accused of cherry picking or taking something out of context, even just to help prove a point. Yesterday, Mari and I came across a gentleman who was trying to attempt grand solar minimums and their theories. And the person was basically a global warming, man-made global warming propaganda machine. I mean, I have never heard such lack of knowledge on the topic. And I get it. These people don't pay attention and they think they have a grasp of what's really happening with a theory, and they just roll with it instead of taking the time to actually go through everything, study the science, understand what's happening. They often refer to people like you and I as climate deniers. We're not climate deniers. We're not climate change deniers. We're man-made climate change deniers. I think we've seen the evidence over the past 15 years. We continue to see more and more new research that reflects cooling is coming. Now it's showing us that cooling is here. But yet still the AGW crowd wants to ignore all that information. They don't even want to look at it. They're telling you that the science is settled. There's no use in looking at new research. And we've said this several times on the Grand Solar Minimum channel that the science is never settled. And science is always going to be about testing over and over and over again. Even if the consensus claims that Grand Solar Minimums are legitimately a part of why we see crop failures and cooling temperatures, and they have a correlation to this stuff, you still, as a scientist, are going to want to test the theory as much as possible to gain understanding of that theory, and maybe, just maybe, having a leg up on predicting when these mega super grand solar minimums and whatnots are happening, which we have a lot of information about that. There's so much stuff that I want to tell all of you right now, but there's a lot of good stuff in the works. I can tell you this, Valentina Zarkova's work is almost completely accepted and will be released soon. And I promise you guys, we will have a thorough examination of that paper, as well as discussions with Zarkova. And I think this changes a lot, too, with what we announced last week on the show about NASA saying that this is the weakest cycle coming up in the last 200 years. It came out the same time where Zarkova's work was being submitted for the final edit process. So it's been accepted. Now we're just waiting for the release. So to me, this is not a coincidence. This was done in synchronicity. They knew this was going to happen. This was timing. This was everything about timing. So the next couple of months on this channel are going to be crucial because there's going to be so much to go over. There's going to be so much to dissect. And I have a feeling that Zarkova and Mari and I will be in constant contact, more than just one follow-up here. It's going to take a couple of discussions, if you ask me. Time permitting for her. She's a very busy person. She travels a lot. She's very, very hard work at her research, and it means a lot to her. So this channel is also going to focus on a lot of her work and help promote that as well, because if this is accepted, peer-reviewed, and we got a glimpse of what was going on with this paper several months ago when she gave her presentation about super grand solar minimum. So I can tell you this, conversations I've had with Mari about the conversations they had the other day, there's some stuff that we really need to have a talk about. And I'm going to save all that for when we get the paper and we get a chance to have Zarkova on personally and not just manipulate her work or speculate. We are going to give it to you straight, guys. So exciting things ahead, also scary at the same time, though. But let's get back to our climate news. Annual CO2 emissions 2018, BP data. This was a report put together by BP. What's up with that? Once again, putting this together. This is a great article. Lots of pieces to go over. First, it wants to show you a pie chart of how much emissions that man puts into the atmosphere. Now, just because you see numbers like 28.26% of CO2, you got to remember that 28.26% is from that 0.004% of CO2 in the atmosphere. And I tell you, folks, the reason why, and I was thinking about this too, but the reason why we could be seeing higher CO2 emissions is that it is true that CO2 is plant food, and with the abundance of nitrogen in our atmosphere and our bedrock, our plants are benefiting big time, but only if they're getting a chance to grow. So when you think about all the acreage this year that is not growing crops, there's crops that are not absorbing the CO2. So that could be a possibility on why we're seeing CO2 levels continue to rise, along with, it's a very small part of it though. I'm not saying it's making an impact cooling or anything like that. I'm saying it's a very small part. We still have the volcanoes, in my opinion, which is the greatest amount of CO2 that's emitted into our atmosphere on a daily basis. And they continue to get bigger and bigger. Just like in 2018, we saw an uptick of some 50,000 footers and multiple 30,000 footers. This year, almost right at the same time, we're talking about 55,000 footers and 30,000 footers, some 40,000 footers. So it almost appears that the frequency and the intensities on these are getting a little bit worse this year. But back to the CO2. Great pie chart here. Shows everybody's contributions in the atmosphere. And then it has another interesting or graph, I should say, from CO2 emissions from developed and developing worlds, 1965 through 2018. And the developing world CO2 emissions were a lot higher, which makes sense to me. You're building more, you're burning more fuels probably in the process of building more. Countries that are in worlds that are developed, you see a steady red line. It's right there in the middle, the sharp red line, that is. Not much decrease, not much increase, just kind of hanging out right there in a groove. So that makes sense to me here. But reading this, some initial points arising from the BP data. Take some highlights here. Having been relatively stable for the overall last 7 years, global CO2 emissions grew by approximately 2% in 2018. 2.5% of this growth was in developing worlds, whereas 1.1% of the growth was in the developed world. This growth of approximately about 650 million tons in 2018 was despite all the international commitments arising from the Paris Climate Agreement. The contrast between the developed and developing worlds remains stark. Developing world emissions overtook developed world CO2 emissions in 2005. They have been escalating ever since. The likely prognosis for their CO2 emissions that they will continue to grow and accelerate. So, again, right on cue with what we've been saying when it comes to CO2, it will continue to rise, just like the volcanic emissions will continue to rise, which will also raise CO2. And we'll also see a big difference in temperatures as well down the road. In the next 5 years, the graph is not going to be just a little bit. It's going to be very significant, where there's going to be almost like a fork from where CO2 goes up and temperature goes down. It's going to be very clear to a lot of folks out there. Talks about other countries, how much emissions they put up. China and Hong Kong, they put up a lot of our emissions, mainly because of CO2 that's burned from their coal plants, natural gas. This article, guys, is chock full of information, and I thought it was important to bring it to you because BP, to me, is being pretty transparent. And there are some points that I want to make here at the bottom of this. Global CO2 previously had plateaued, but since 2016 they have shown a significant uplift. Unsurprisingly, the emissions growth has mainly occurred in developing nations, groups such as India and the rest of the world, as their quality of life is progressing improving. That's not what I wanted. Sorry. Bottom part. Maybe. Yes. Okay. So here we go. The main parts of this article that stuck out the most to me. This is a very lengthy piece here. But here it says, carbon dioxide is 75 times less effective as greenhouse gas than water vapor and clouds. any extra CO2 in the atmosphere just makes plants grow better and helps to feed the world. So hugely damaging UK policy will only address 1 out of 7,500 of the problem, an extra CO2 in the atmosphere. The modern short pulse of beneficial global warming has stopped 20 years ago, and recent global temperatures are now stable or declining. Important to point out as well. According to reliable ice core records of the last millennium, was the coldest of our history, and the world has already begun cooling quite rapidly for the last 3,000 years. The one here at the bottom kind of makes me think a little bit here. The weather gets worse in colder times. The world will very soon, on a geological timescale, revert to a true glaciation again, resulting in mile-high ice sheets over New York. Yeah, I'm thinking southern Tennessee here in the next couple of years. Who knows? But not only is the data plain, very simple to see, very well put together by BP. Thank you for this report. Thank you for What's Up With That for taking the time to write this piece and dissect it. But with all the talk of rising CO2 units over the past several years, yet we still have talk of colder temperatures. And now we're hearing in this article, and we've heard this before. I mean, there's tons of us in the Grand Solar Minimum community that believe glaciation is around the corner. Some folks think it's very, very soon, no later than 2050. Some folks think it's going to be in the 2040s. But a lot of you, most of you have been here for a long time. You've heard this before in the 70s. We're going to die by cooling. Crops are going to be failing. You've heard this scare before. And then in the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s, it was the global warming scare. And then Al Gore took over and claims that no more ice caps on the poles by 2014, and no more snow for our children's children. They won't even know what it looks like. Almost everything, in fact, everything he said has been a lie. And CO2 continues to rise, and yet we continue to see temperatures cool ever so slightly, but they are cooling. Down almost a half degrees over baseline from 2016. I find that very significant in just 3 years. Climate fail. Influential Aussie politician demands cheaper energy and a new coal plant. I read parts of this. Actually, I read it all. They're wheeling and dealing here in Australia. They want cheaper electricity. So they're basically holding up some tax cuts, is what it sounds like, over some of the politicians here in Australia who want a coal-fired power station. Now, this One Nation leader, Pauline Hanson, has consistently supported an end to the green energy mandates to make Australian energy more affordable. Her climate views are advised by a prominent Aussie climate skeptic, Malcolm Roberts, who is likely to win a One Nation federal Senate seat. Votes are still being counted. But when Scott Morrison won the election, we were told that the days of these green policies are going to be out the window. So even though this Pauline Hanson doesn't have the majority vote, I still feel like that Scott Morrison definitely wants to see the Australian people get cheaper electricity. And from what I understand, Mr. Morrison's stance on this is that he is a pro-coal kind of guy. So this should be a no-brainer for governmental business in Australia. And it's just good to see that it appears these parties are going to come together to work on negotiating a tax cut via we get a coal-fired power station. And like I said, with the knowledge that this Morrison has on the climate and coal, he's already pro-coal, this should happen. This will probably happen. And hopefully Australian nation will see a relief on their electricity bills and their winter heating bill. Now, this news really comes right as we're approaching their winter season, and it's been cold there already. Some areas started receiving their midwinter cold 2 months early before it was supposed to be here. So I'm sure there's plenty of people in Australia that are hoping that this gets pushed through fast and quick, because it's getting very, very expensive to power and heat their homes right now as we speak, and cool it. Hey, let's not ignore the fact that we had 120 degree Fahrenheit temperatures in Australia during their summer months. They had a heat wave, pretty bad one. But still, in the grand solar minimum, you have shorter grow seasons and longer and colder winters. And right now, winter showed up 2 months early in Australia, parts of Australia, I should say. Chances are it's going to run a little late as well, which backs up the whole shorter grow seasons. Look at the last 2 years on grow seasons. And boy, do I have a before and after comparison. You guys are just mouths are gonna hit the floor. But look at the last 2 years on how things have kind of declined since we started talking about the increase of cosmic rays, the lower solar activity, how vulnerable Earth is now to space particles and highly charged particles from all over the galaxy, seeding our clouds, creating cloud coverage and cooling, reflecting what TSI we're getting from the sun back into space. Which reminds me, they're talking about the albedo effect and how the Greenland ice sheets are melting really, really fast. Well, if there's cloud coverage, the TSI that they're claiming that is melting these ice in Greenland, that's false. That TSI is already being bounced off in the cloud deck for the most part. So we'll get into that here just in a second. But I wanted to talk about the largest glacier in Greenland, the Jakobshavn, is clearly growing very, very, very strong over the last 3 years. And here is the reading from the melt that we had. Okay. 200 billion tons of ice melted on June 13th, I believe was the date. Okay. They're showing another chart here. Melt extent from July 8th, 2012 to July 12th. Look at that. Almost completely gone. But the point I'm trying to make is, in 2018, we saw over 510 billion tons of ice growth for the year. Now, divide 310 billion tons by 365, and you had an average growth of about 1.5, 1.6 billion tons per day. So we get one day where we get 2 billion tons in one day that melts. So if you put that up against how much we grow in one day, usually, about 1.6, let's say it's only growing 1.3. So we're basically losing 0.7 billion tons of ice for that one day. But you know how mainstream media is, and this was part of why our article got taken down, because of all this crap, this headline of these sled dogs sliding across, water with ice still underneath, so they're wading in frozen waters basically. I guess that's what we're looking at here. But guys, this spring, Greenland is melting 3 times faster and even earlier than the phase of the global warming era, blah, blah, blah. The Starman did a really good job on showing some charts. And they show that these peaks happen. That what we're looking at here happens every summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Okay. Yes, it is early. The graphs I saw, the peaks were more around this area right here. So yes, it's early, but it's more than possible to see even a double spike on this another day. But again, folks, let's calm it down a little bit here. 2 billion tons of ice is a lot of ice if you don't know how much ice is on Greenland, okay? So when you hear the number of 510 billion tons of ice from last year, 2018, all right? 510 billion tons in the entire year is what we gained. And you guys want to freak out about one day of losing 30% above normal ice in one day? 30%. 30 to 40%, I guess. That's it. We'll make that back up in 4 days. I mean, this is the part of the year where Greenland gets warm. It is summertime, approaching summertime here in the Northern Hemisphere. Last I checked, June 21st goes all the way through September 21st. It's an amazing season. It warms during that period of time. And with high pressure blocking of that area right now, it's kind of been around for a little while. It's magnifying the stratospheric warming that we're having too. I know we talk about Greenland blocks mainly in the wintertime. That usually means nor'easters on the east coast for us. More snow, colder temperatures dipping further south in these Greenland blocks. So I imagine in the summer months it has the reverse effect as well. So I think that has something to do with the reason why they have the 2 billion tons of ice. Now, yes, it is a lot of ice in one day to melt, but it has happened before. Many times. So, again, thanks to Mari. She did a great job today on our solar update where she kind of had herself a little bit of a rant. Proud of her. Mari is a very factual person. She doesn't like to start controversy. And to hear her be upset about the way we're being treated with this information, she has every right to be upset, especially when the people who are exaggerating the lie even more, trying to make us and people like us less credible with this mainstream media hype and scare of the 2 billion tons of ice lost in one day. Yes, it's a high amount, but like I said, you do the math. 1.5, 1.6 billion tons of ice was gained on an average for a daily basis in 2018. If you take the 510 billion tons and divide it by 365 days, you're going to get around 1.5, 1.6 billion tons a day of growth. So when you look at that, it's a very tiny percentage of the ice that just melted in Greenland. It does not deserve the attention, and especially Forbes.com. We reached out to them. We really like to know why you guys had to remove that article. It was clearly stating that up until that point in time, 2015, that global warming was not melting the polar ice caps like everybody was being told. All right, so let's get into the crop report, guys. Before we do that, Matt Bros and a couple other people, actually multiple people, sent me this link. Rex Adams, I think, and also, forgive me, guys, John Clark. I have gotten this email, I'm pretty sure, from all three of you. And then I believe Mari shared this with me as well. This is not fake. This guy pays attention to what he's doing. And the picture on the left is this time last year. And I believe it because there were some times in Ohio, and this is Indiana, these crop fields, where the temperature, the conditions in Ohio, southwest Ohio, eastern Indiana, it gets hot, it gets humid. And there's lots of growth. I mean, I've seen corn stalks, no lie, 12 feet tall in parts of Ohio. 2014, 2015, 2016. So in 2018, this guy was up to his eyes in corn stalks. And here he is in 2019, and he's up to his, well, top of his feet. That's not even coming up to the ankles, folks. And when I saw this picture the other night, it's sad. This is the reality of some of these farmers right now. And we're at June 19th. Summer is supposed to be starting in 2 days. And then we have almost 3 full months of summer-like temperatures. I mentioned the crop situation last night in a comment section on a friend's Facebook page because I believe he was talking about New York had passed a recent law where immigrants are receiving their driver's license in the state of New York illegally. And now they're approving it. So New York is saying you can, if you're illegal, that's fine. You can get a driver's license. And I told him, I said, this is just a distraction from what's really happening right now. All these outrageous political stunts that are being, placed throughout the country and the world. It's a distraction. They better pay attention to what's happening to our farms. My friend, who, no fault of his own, he's just part of the normal mainstream. He's a normal, regular guy, married with kids, good job, watches sports, watches the news, does the normal, everyday Joe type activities. So it may not be a session or time for him to sit and critically think, which people get busy in their life, and that does happen. So he relies on mainstream media and just the old gut. His comment and his reply to mine was, we'll be fine. Crops will be fine. It'll warm up late this summer and stay warm through the fall. I hope he's right. I really hope he's right, because I know a couple farmers who also are praying for an Indian summer. I was talking to Matt from Nebraska the other night about heat and what he needs to get these corn crops and other crops growing. And the problem is that where he lives, he hasn't had enough heat. He hasn't had enough days that's in a temperature that's suitable for growing. So even though we're going to show you crop report today of people that are actually able to work in fields, the next problem is getting these plants to grow. And we've shown you guys statistics where the crops are planted, but there is a certain amount that are refusing to just come up out of the ground, whether it's soil temperature, whether it's soil saturation, whatever the case may be. We are having trouble right now with plants and crops getting going and trying to get this grow season underway. Right now, if you live in the deep south, you're in good shape, temperature-wise, for crop growing. A little bit different picture in the center part of the United States, and this is what we were talking about. Look at this, 2019, the corn prices emerged by June. Look at it, 79% right now, compared to other years behind it. We are a lot lower than 2013 and 2019. I mean, this is shocking. Look at this, guys. This is the amount of U.S. corn that has emerged. Okay? So in 2019, we're well off the pace right now. Soybeans, not as bad, but only 55% of the soybean crop is growing. So you can say not as bad, but that's not great either. Let's continue to move through the day now. I'll find out some more numbers on the percentages of what's been planted and what's coming out of the ground. This is becoming one of my more reliable parts of this report. We're seeing numbers closer to 100%. June 16th, though, Illinois still at 88%. They're up 15%. They were 100% planted last year at this point. Their 5-year average is 100%, so they're still down 12% as of June 16th. The worst area right now, Ohio. And that's only going to get worse because of the continued moisture that you guys are seeing as we speak right now. Ohio has 68% of its corn planted. Now, the friend of mine that said the crops will be fine, everything will be fine, surprisingly, he's from Ohio. he lives near the area of the tornado of recent. He's watching his local towns and villages flooding right now because of all the rain they're getting. And there's more to come. So out of the 68% planted in Ohio, only 50% of the crop has emerged. Last year, this time, they were 95% of the crops were emerged from the ground. 95%. Indiana, 84% of your crops are planted. You're slowly but surely getting up there. Last year, this time, though, you had 100% planted, and only 61% of the crop has emerged. And guys, think about it this way. The pictures I showed you of the guy standing in the field with a corn stalk to his eyes, and now they're not even up to his ankles, that's in Indiana. So his field is part of that 61% that's emerged. That's what we're looking at in Indiana, in Illinois, in Ohio. Send in your pictures, folk. If you got pictures of cornfields that are low or high, I want to see both sides of it. I just don't want the low producing fields. I want to see who's out there that's doing well. North Carolina, 100%. You're all good. You're in the ground. 100% coming out of the ground. Tennessee, Texas, same thing for you guys. 100% in the ground, 99% coming out of the ground. If they're predicting mile-high ice sheets over New York, Tennessee is a no-brainer, I guess, for me. It could be different for everybody else. It's going to be hot and muggy still, even during the GSM, but definitely better than living in an area that is going to be under ice in the next several decades. Who knows how quickly that will come to fruition. Soybeans. Let's move to that. Illinois, 49% last week. You guys jumped up to 70% in the ground, but only 50% has emerged. That's up 25% from the week before as well. And then we got Indiana, 42% soybeans were planted last week. This week we're at 64%, but only 38% of the soybean crop has emerged from the ground. Last year this time, we were at 93%. So right now, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio really stand, and Michigan too. I mean, good Lord, 34% is showing out of the ground, 53% planted. They were 85% planted last year this time, and 75% emerged from the ground at this point in time as well. Ohio's got one of the worst soybean crops right now in the United States. It was Indiana and Illinois. They just took over. Ohio last week had 17% emerging from the ground. This week up 12% to 29%. But last year this time we had 87% of soybean crops poking through. Tennessee coming in a little low. Just kidding. Their 5-year averages is 62% emerge right now. They're already sitting at 72% emerge from the ground. And last year was at 69%. So they're better than last year. They're better than their 5-year average. Tennessee clearly is so far looking the best as far as crop season for soybeans and corn, which there's other crops that we need to follow besides these two, but these are a big part of our foundation of our food securities. So the situations look like they're improving. We're seeing more 83%. I mean, granted, Kansas 99%. Last time this year was emerged of corn, only 83%. Kentucky, you're only down 6% this year. 4%, I'm sorry. Michigan, holy heck. You had 86% of the corn popping through. This year you have 48% of the crops, of corn crops popping through. And it's June 16th. That's when this report was concluded. Missouri was at 100% last year this time. They're at 80. They're 20% back. Emerged. And we don't know how tall these crops are. We're just telling you what's come out of the ground. North Carolina doing well. 100% emerged. Good for you. 50% Ohio. We already talked about that. 56 in South Dakota. We kind of imagine that too. They had a lot of floods from snow and rain. And the proof is right here, guys. Here's some cotton. Some of it's doing good. Some of it's not doing so good. For the most part, your cotton plants, looks like we're okay. Peanuts, different story. Not much hurting in that department as well. And rice, also doing well compared to previous years. But the main soybean and corn are really suffering right now due to the flooding conditions and everything else. This progress report here is great. It gives us winter wheat reports as well, spring wheat, barley percent, barley condition. I highly advise everybody to take time to check out these crop reports. They come out every week. Was it Tuesday every week, Maury?
Yes.
So every Tuesday we get a new one. So when we come on live Wednesday, it's kind of like the Roy Spencer report, how we go over that every first of the month. We will go over this the day of or after when this crop report does come out. Ohio, 2.5 days of suitable work in fields. The continuation of all the rain, I don't know if that's accurate. I'm sure it might be a little high. Nebraska, it's saying you got 5.4 days. The heart of the country, the middle part of the country, is looking good. According to farmers in Missouri, Arkansas, Mississippi, also getting full weeks of work finally. But it's June 16th, guys. This is the first time all year that we've seen a full week worth of work that's able to be done in the fields, and it's June 16th. It might be too late for some of these places. I mean, just check out the surplus we have right now. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Gotta love these crop reports. All right. Lots of water in Ohio and Michigan, slightly more in Indiana, New York. We're in that lighter blue. We're actually in that 40 to 49% to almost 50% range of surplus when it comes to water. The South, surprisingly, you're kind of low. Louisiana, Mississippi, these waters that are receded, that were flooded earlier, guys, you got to be concerned with contamination now. What's in the ground? What's in the soil after all the floodwaters? What are we looking at? And that's also the cause for concern as well. So what's going to happen here with our weather for this week? Knowing what we know now about the crops. First of all, I want to take you where there's snow. That's right, snow. There's snow right now. No, I don't want to subscribe, but thank you, Vancouver is awesome. If you're driving on Ontario Wednesday morning, be prepared for a slippery drive. That's right, folks. Looks like a little thin coating of snow on the ground. Nothing too crazy, but the elevation of this picture is only 1621 meters. But December night, or June, it's very high. Well, it's just to think about how it could be a lot more snow if it was in a higher elevation, not just a dusting.
Carlos Ramirez just shared a bleak report on Twitter. Alberta's getting some nasty cold weather.
I saw that in the GFS forecast. Mari says that Carlos on Twitter is saying that Alberta's getting some very cold weather right now, and I thought we saw something in the GFS, and that is now being confirmed. So snow in Canada and BC, and then severe weather once again. I mean, this is over and over and over again. These areas that are getting threatened with severe weather almost on a daily basis. Here's a current look at our radar. Columbus, Dayton, you just got a bunch of rain, a little bit of light showers behind it. Nothing to really worry about. Thanks, but no thanks, Weather Channel on the ads. Hail is estimated to be as large as 3 to 4 inches in diameter in Polk County, Arkansas on Wednesday evening. The very large hail reportedly caused damage in Cove, Arkansas. Flash flooding was reported in Columbus, Ohio Wednesday evening. There are reports of waist-deep water along Interstate 71 just downtown of Columbus. And I want to share with you really quick, I-71 from Cincinnati to Columbus. I just had a lady comment how she was driving from Cincinnati, I-71 up through Columbus and looking at all the fields, the farm fields in water, standing water. And now we're hearing of waist-deep water in some areas along Interstate 71. So the situation here in Ohio is getting from bad to worse in a hurry. And we'll show you the GFS and when we're going to see some relief from the rain. Stormy forecast, slow-moving frontal system will glide through the plains and Ohio Valley to the East Coast by Thursday night. The threat for scattered severe storms will focus on the East Coast on Thursday, with the potential for significant flight delays Thursday afternoon in the major airport hubs of the Northeast, including 3 New York City area airports, Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and D.C. Damaging wind gusts are the main threats for these storms, but an isolated tornado cannot be ruled out. A few isolated severe storms are also possible Thursday in parts of the Plain States. Mid-Missouri Valley, large hail is the greatest threat in these areas. Again, chance of flash flooding. Columbus, you're reporting more. Now, I-71 runs on the northeast side of Columbus, so that part of I-71 could possibly see more flooding rains. But look at that, smack dab through Indianapolis, Indiana, Richmond, Indiana, into southwestern Ohio, Dayton, Greenville, Brookville, all those rural areas out there along I-75, Salina, Lima, Ohio, St. Mary's, Ohio. You guys have a very moderate chance of flash flooding through early Thursday morning this week. Additional rounds of severe thunderstorms and flooding rains are expected Friday into this weekend. Parts of the plains and Midwest. Giving us a link here for more on the story. And just an update from Tuesday's weather from the Kansas, which by the way, we saw some very large hail in Kansas yesterday and very heavy rain in the area that I was expecting to see heavy rains across Wichita, Kansas City. Also, a tornado broke out on the 1st, but this was already reported on. But so, yeah, more of the same, this pattern of there's storms on the east, there's storms on the west, there's storms in the south. And I wanted to show this before I go into the GFS outlook. Wisconsin's towns lingering snow pile. Will it ever melt? I had to look at this story because last year this time they talked about this same snow pile that wouldn't go away. In the middle of June, finally it goes away. So last year the pile hung around till July 9th because we had a really bad April snowstorm. I remember that, 31 inches of snow. You get that kind of snow, yeah, you're going to have a snow pile that sticks around long. But look at that, July 9th. So right now, this is its current size, around 2 feet deep. Does it have a chance to stay here till July? It's still impressive that this snow pile for 2 years in a row has lasted well into spring months, into early summer. So I just wanted to bring that up again. This is 2 years in a row that this area in Wisconsin has seen a snow pile that's still existent in a parking garage in Wisconsin. Yeah, it's only about 2 feet deep, but it's June 19th as well. So pretty impressive stuff there. Definitely say it's getting a little bit colder. Here's a current look at our satellite radar. That system is moving off the East Coast, and boy, some storms just exploded in northern Texas, into Oklahoma and parts of Arkansas just now. Almost atmospheric compression like type situation. Guys, take a look here at the end of this reel. Go ahead and get out the handy dandy arrow and show you what I'm talking about right here. Watch right now. Boom, right at the end. So keep our eyes on that area, and let's go ahead and take a look at our GFS. Actually, we'll go to the windy first. Let's update this really fast. As you can see right now, we got a batch of heavy rain in downtown Columbus, stretching all the way to Chillicothe. Dayton, you're in the clear right now. Parts of Canton, expect rain. Mansfield, tons of rain right now. Heavy rain, lots of lightning north of Columbus into Cambridge. Pittsburgh, get ready. You're getting ready to get some of these thunderstorms rolling into your parts of the woods. Parts of Kentucky, Bowling Green, Somerset, Lexington, Kentucky, Louisville. Getting heavy rain as we speak right now. Parts of Tennessee, Nashville just got a heavy batch of rain moving through. Now Murfreesboro along Interstate 24. Look out down there in Manchester, Deckard, Estill Springs, and Winchester. You guys are going to see a line of thunderstorms moving in, and there's a lot of lightning involved with that as well. And then we go back a little further here, taking a look at this recent outbreak of, look at all this lightning, and that was part of that explosion of activity in just a matter of seconds. So this storm is packing a lot of punch when it comes to lightning moving through Arkansas right now, southern Arkansas. Little Rock, you're about to get nailed. Let's see if we can zoom in here and give you guys a little bit of an idea of what cities are getting ready to get hit. Right now here in Arkansas is the most concern. tons of lightning, heavy rain, Camden, Monticello, Pine Bluff, brace yourselves, Magnolia, Eldora, and then parts of northern Texas as well, DeKalb, Linden, and Mount Pleasant going through a pretty bad storm right now as well. And that was the action I was talking about on the end of our satellite. Also, we got to watch out in central Texas as well. Brownwood into Morgan, lots of lightning with this very small cell, but very, very powerful. And just over a matter of minutes, huge amounts of lightning developing with these storms, especially the one over Brownwood right now. I wouldn't be surprised if you go to Twitter and search Brownwood, Texas. You're going to probably see some pretty radical looking lightning strikes as we speak right now. This is local time 10:03 Eastern, so it's about 9:03 over in Texas at this time, if I'm not mistaken. Let's go ahead and take a look at our GFS radar outlook. This is for Thursday. Yes, that's correct. Most of the United States in the east, the Midwest, and the southeast are going to receive widespread rain showers throughout the day. Into the 20th, the south will get some action as well overnight. And this storm system will move into the northeast by Thursday night as more rain showers continue to develop behind that in Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota, into Nebraska, and northern parts of Kansas before it finally flows into Iowa and Missouri by Friday. And then by the weekend, more heavy rain to hit southern Illinois and southern Indiana and invading parts of southwestern Ohio as well into the weekend. Saturday, June 22nd, a little bit of a dry spell, but more showers and storms develop across the Carolinas, Tennessee, Kentucky. More line of storms back in Oklahoma and Kansas. Colorado also looking at some storm action. And then we got a big low pressure system in southern Canada that's edging Montana and North Dakota. We're going to watch that storm, and it kind of just, again, the atmosphere loads up. Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, Indiana, Illinois, more of the same. Heavy rain, moderate rain back in Ohio. As soon as that system moves into Monday, we got more heavy rain on the backside of this, redeveloping in Iowa, Kansas, Missouri. Again, St. Louis, Kansas City, Wichita, Des Moines. We need to watch out for these areas. There's going to be a couple of days where we get a lot of heavy rain and then more scattered showers across the Ohio Valley before early next week we start to see these showers get lighter and lighter across the region. So a little bit of good news so far in this GFS outlook, but still chances of heavy to moderate rain continue to develop, and they start back up again on June 27th before moving across the same areas of Illinois and Ohio, kind of remaining stationary in the Arkansas, Missouri, western Tennessee, and western Kentucky region, and more moisture for the south finally by the end of June. There's a high pressure system that's sitting over the Great Lakes. It's kind of keeping Ohio and the Northeast dry for a few days. So if anything, there's been a little bit of change in the pattern here, but by July 2nd, expect more showers and storms to start inundating the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and back across the east and the northeast before more storms move in from the northwest once again across the Ohio Valley by the 4th of July. So a lot of this moisture is now shifting through Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia, and parts of the Northeast and the Deep South. But we still get bouts of heavy rains from time to time in the heartland part of our country. The Middle Plains, right here on the 27th of June in Kansas, and then again, heavier rain on June 24th, so 3 days before that. Again, the 23rd of June, a weak system on the 21st, and then this widespread amount right now that's happening mainly in the Midwest and the East. So still plenty of rain chances for the Midwest, the Northern Plains, the Southeast, Florida, Northeast. But in the West, starting to get a little dry. And nothing wrong with that because they actually, parts like Arizona and New Mexico, actually have a surplus of rain. So this dry weather in the southwest and northwest part of the United States meanwhile in Canada, we're getting nasty cold and snow and rain. And the southwest part, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, California, Washington, and Portland, Oregon, those areas we're going to remain dry for a little while. We've had a wet, miserable spring, winter, Ohio, actually Dayton, Ohio has 26.43 inches of rain year to date right now. Seattle is sitting at 14.43, and they're getting ready to go through another dry spell. So definitely some pattern shifts are underway, and we will start to see some relief, a little bit drier weather coming to the Midwest and to the Central Plains. But really, at this point, the ground's so saturated, we don't have to have 4 inches of rain in one day. We can just get an inch of rain for the day and still have some flooding issues in parts of Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Oklahoma, parts of Texas. Doesn't need much rain right now as we speak. Temperatures, the last broadcast we were talking about warmth. The deep south and the west definitely going to be a lot warmer. And then we start to heat up a little bit across the central U.S. on June 27th. That heat continues to expand a little bit further north. By the 30th of June, we'll see readings in the 80s in the Dakotas. Still relatively cool in the northwest, in the mid-70s, the upper 60s. But the 80s will inundate the United States by the 1st of July, no doubt, except for the northwest part of the country. That will remain a little bit cooler. And they're actually expecting cooler temperatures in the northwest and the western part of the United States for the end of June and July. But GFS is kind of showing a different picture. Now, the heat looks like it's going to be here. It's summer. But something interesting here on June 4th, Ohio and northward, the Midwest, the upper Midwest, the northern plains, and northeast kind of cool down a little bit on the 4th of July. Look at these temperatures. Blazing hot in the southwest, in Texas, in Oklahoma, Kansas, where it usually does get hot. But the southeast gets a little relief, and so does the Midwest and the northeast, the mid-Atlantic states. Look at these lows for July 5th. Seeing 40s and 50s in Maine. 80s return, mid-70s, low 80s. Not bad for July in Ohio. I've lived there. It's usually hot and humid right now. So far, the forecast that I was kind of banking on, which was the south gets hot, the southwest gets hot, and we see a heat up in the central plains states. That's holding together. Cooler in the northeast, about average right now for this time of year when you get to July 5th, 83 degrees. It's right where we should be. I can tell you right now, 75 degrees near Toledo, Ohio is not where we should be for an Ohio 4th of July. Those folks are in the mid-80s up that far north. Dayton, Ohio only expected to get to 80 degrees on 4th of July, and the overnight lows are going to be in the upper 50s. So that's hoodie weathers, folks. You're going to be watching fireworks in hoodies, basically, on the 4th of July in Ohio. Parts of Michigan, definitely. New York as well, and of course the rest of the Northeast. So no surprise here on the temperatures getting hot, but a little bit surprised that we cool off a little bit too in parts of the United States where usually we see the heat really crank up. And so far, the heat is staying in the deep south for the most part. I mean, we're touching 80s and 90s throughout the Central Plains, the Dakotas, Nebraska, Kansas. But how long-term is this going to be? For these folks, I hope it's long-term because I know how much they need the heat right now for these crops to grow. So this is not a bad thing, folks. When we're talking about our food security and how bad we've had it so far, we need this heat. We need this dry weather. So hopefully this is a sign of a pattern change where we can get some action from some of these farms. But I got to be honest with you guys. Some of these farmers are already past that point if it's too late. So this weather cooperating is happening a little bit later. Now this would be okay. We could just say, well, let's just plant late and we'll harvest later. But you have to have temperatures to sustain that. You know, we could start getting cold again. If we planted now, if we relied on 2 more weeks of letting it dry out and planted after that, I mean, we would be at our first freeze before we got to harvest in some areas. And with Australia getting their cold earlier this year, I want to believe that trend is possibly going to happen here in the United States, and we could be looking at our first freeze in northern parts of the United States by, honestly, the first week of October, possibly late September, if we follow suit to what happened in Australia in the beginning of their autumn and winter season. So Lots going on, folks. Let's take a look. This is the rain precipitation. So we showed you this before. 6 to 8 inches in the Ohio, Indiana region. On top of that, we're going to receive another 4 to 6 inches of rain in those same regions that just got 6 to 8. So your rain totals aren't going to stop. You're breaking records left and right. Flooding will continue, and that's just a problem, guys. Into July, we're still going to see floods in Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, parts of Missouri, parts of Kansas, parts of Iowa. Not much improvement. Even though the temperatures will be a lot warmer, we're still going to experience quite a bit of moisture. Not as much as we've seen lately, thank God, but still enough. Put these weather maps in motion. Hey, Mario, would you like to come over and say hi to everybody?
I would love to say hi to everyone, Jake.
Oh, by the way, I want to show this map. It's snowing in Greenland. The area where we're worried about all this ice, it's snowing right now in Greenland. Just wanted to throw that out there, folks. If you want to take a look at our map here, I'll zoom in.
Fire up the presses, everyone.
Let's, it's dire. Just in case if you're worried about breaking out the flip-flops and the beach suits, here we have snow, Greenland, right in this area. Same area everybody's concerned about ice melting. Okay, sorry, I had to, Mari.
Oh, Jake, I wouldn't expect any less from you. First off, I would like to thank Matthew McDonald and Matt Bros for their super chats. It's very kind of you. We very much appreciate that. We had a lot of mods in the chat. I don't know if I have them all off the top of my head. Carlos, Rain, Jessica. Oh my God.
Oh wow, some of these names I haven't heard in a while.
There's a lot of them that haven't been there. Matt Bros is in here.
Matt is a mod now?
He should be. I should just make him a mod.
Just go ahead and make him a mod.
I'll do that.
I say
after.
he's at least a GSM contributor.
I can't do it right now while we're live, but I'll do it. All right, I promise.
Looking like lots of rain coming to the UK too over the next several days. They're also going to get a little warmer too, but significant rain coming to this region once again. Go ahead, Mari.
Oak says that your presentation is very smooth, and he's willing to bet that Mari gets major credit for show prep.
Absolutely. It's a little bit of both.
We're a team effort here. This channel takes a lot of work to keep going. It's not just YouTube. It's Twitter, Facebook. It's like the website.
I'll give you a quick example of teamwork. While I'm reading articles, Mari's in the background talking about other articles and giving me facts. So I have to train my brain to take one side of it to listen to Mari and the other side reading another article. So, I mean, it really is a team effort every day.
And then we have people asking us for interviews. We have people we're asking for interviews. I'm helping very important people with very important projects in regards to this topic. So we're working on a lot of stuff. So we appreciate everyone. I got off topic here, Jake.
We were thanking people.
John wrote us a poem for the GSM community.
Oh, boy.
Roses are wet, violets are wet, everything's wet. Please stop raining.
That is a pretty good poem.
If I didn't get it right, I'm sorry. It just made me laugh. Milky Way, actually, he's another mod that was in the chat we haven't seen in a while. He actually said the corn out in Tennessee near him is 4 foot tall.
Yeah, I believe that.
So good.
Yep.
Good. And he wants to talk to you about micronova, so you're gonna have to message him in the background.
Will do.
All right.
Quickly before you continue, notice, guys, we got a little bit of a low pressure system in Australia to kind of watch over the next several weeks going into July, and also in mid-July there looks like the chance for snow in southern Australia again. Go ahead,
Jake. You're like the worldly weatherman. Thank you.
No, thank you. Because of you, I kind of look at our analytics and I see where most of our people are watching.
No, it's just me. I said, Jake, we have a lot of people in Australia, and they just want a heads up
Australia,
of what's going
UK,
on.
Europe,
we have a
Canada.
lot of people over the pond, and in Canada, they want a little bit of, attention when it comes to the weather. So
now, if we start getting attention from North Korea, I don't know what to do.
Please no. We're happy to go ahead and cover a broader spectrum with the tropical tidbits. Okay. Speaking of tropical tidbits, we did have a question about, is there anything developing out there, and I've been keeping my eye on. I haven't seen anything. It doesn't seem like the ocean temperatures are really favoring anything like that, but I haven't checked recently. Go on, Jake.
You're right. No, the waters are still cool. The North Atlantic is still below baseline. I mean, high pressure is developed over the middle of the ocean. The waves off of Africa are fizzling out, if there is anything coming off of Africa. So looking at this chart, I mean, we are quiet. And again, that goes with these El Niños with the wind shear. And the more wind shear that is present, then the better chances of these hurricanes actually not getting their acts together and making landfall. So far, so good. As far as into the near future, into mid-July, there is nothing. There's no chance of any kind of development at this point through July 5th.
We have a few new people that chimed in. One person, Jaminit. I guess, you know, you guys with your usernames. Hello, Mari. I'm trying to get friends and family to come to the GSM channel. I have a lot that are finally waking up, and I'm trying to take the scare out and replace it with knowledge. So GSM it is. That is awesome.
Great to hear.
That is really great to hear. I have problems myself getting my friends and family over here paying attention to what's going on, and we're in their ears all the time, aren't we, Jake? It's very hard to get people convinced.
If you talk to them like the way I'm talking to you right now, you're going to get somewhere. If you're yelling and screaming and, you know, saying sensational things and we're going to die and this and that, you know, to me, the people who are just average, everyday people aren't going to want to hear that.
Well, people don't get why I geek out. I'm like, oh, I get to talk to Valentina Zarkova today. And people don't understand my excitement with it. They're like, oh, she's just the crazy science nerd or something that, you know, whatever, Mari. I get a lot of that. Carlos says the next high over Greenland can reach 1045. So check his Twitter out. He tweets some great stuff right alongside David Birch, Starman. Really a great community on Twitter. Very enjoyable. A lot of people, a lot of wealth of information.
I learned a lot about INSO on Twitter.
There's some great stuff on Twitter. Kansas Terry said in her area 95% of the fields got planted, and that's just what she can see. If the weather cooperates, the harvest will be big enough. We just need to avoid any early frost, fall frost.
That's the biggest concern now. What an awful
thought that is now to even think of that, but that is so true.
They're busting their butts. They're working their asses off. They finally get planted, and now they look at the dates and they think, oh boy, are we going to be able to get this harvest out? Is this going to happen? Because early frost, I'm telling you, I'm not trying to be scare tactic here, but I do think it's possible in a lot of parts in the United States by late September.
Grizzly just popped in and did a super chat just now. Thank you very much, buddy. We haven't seen you in a while. You've been popping in late. We're going to have to get your notifications fixed somehow. That's all I really got. You made fun of my promotion on Teespring with our t-shirts, Jake, about the free shipping. So
I didn't make fun of it.
I changed the promo code to GSM Love because we love all y'all, and it's 20% off. So it's back to being 20% off for the rest of the month.
See, I like it.
Does that make you happy, Jake?
Things are on sale. I'm happy. So
okay, so there, you strike a hard deal, Jake. I hope all of you have a wonderful evening. We'll be back at, Friday live, right, Jake? And we'll have some solar updates and all that fun stuff. Did I steal your thunder, Jake? Do you want me to say we'll talk soon, too? I'm just...
All right. Okay. Thank you, Mari, our lovely producer. And she's wide awake tonight. So good stuff there. All right. So, guys, we will check in live again Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. The lovely Mari will also probably have us a couple of solar updates throughout the week to finish us off. So until then, on Friday night, we will talk soon, guys. Take care.